If you're a retro gamer, like I am, you know better than anyone else that people today have it super easy when it comes to video games. There's difficulty settings, there's save states, there's all these different things that ultimately just make games way too easy when compared to games back in the day. You know, there's the term NES hard, and I think a lot of retro gamers take pride in the fact that the games on these older systems take a lot more finesse and dedication to get through. But why? I never really got, to be honest, why that was a point of pride and something that people put a lot of stock into, because coming from my perspective, and don't get me wrong, I do love a lot of retro games, and we're going to be talking about a bunch. A lot of them I do like, but the difficulty in a lot of these old games, ultimately for me, always comes down to either like hardware limitations, things like save states, or predatory business practices. A lot of these games used to be arcade games, so they want to get as many quarters from you as they can. Or there's that classic story of games when they're being brought to America, being made harder than their Japanese counterparts because we had a rental market and the manufacturers didn't want us renting the game for a few hours and beating it. So in this video, I'm going to be looking at a few retro games that outline these issues and serve as good examples of them. And I'm also going to be looking at modern games that I think do difficulty better than retro games do. Because if you've seen any of my other content, you know I do like easy games. I'm a big fan of like Kirby and Yoshi and Pokemon, stuff like that. I'm not like a Dark Souls player or anything. But that doesn't mean I hate games just because they're hard. There are plenty of hard games that I've loved, that I will talk about in this video. I guess ultimately I want people to come away from this video with an understanding that although I too would be obnoxious if I'd played Contra enough to like be able to beat it in one life, it's not fun for the modern gamer to go back and do that. And I don't think it's good game design in general. Like, I get being nostalgic for it and enjoying it if that's what you grew up with. From like an artistic standpoint, these games being as hard as they are do not serve the games in any way. To start this off, we'll go with a notoriously hard game on the NES, and a game I genuinely do really like. I've put it pretty high up on my like favorite games on the NES lists in the past, and things similar to that, and that's Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2. The footage is from 1. I'm going to be kind of talking about both here. Ninja Gaiden has such a cool world, especially 2 with that opening cinematic. That's like, I remember watching that like on the original cartridge on my NES the first time. It was like right after I'd bought Ninja Gaiden 2. Watching an NES game have a cinematic like that in it was so cool. Obviously Ninja Gaiden's music is like some of my favorite retro gaming music, period. And really cool cutscenes. There weren't really any cutscenes at this time, so it was sick to see a platformer that had those. The issue is that in either Ninja Gaiden game, I'm never going to get past the second or third level. It's so hard. There are enemies everywhere. They spawn in and just instantly start chasing you. Like, Kirby has the same thing, where like, if you leave a screen, enemies spawn back in. But the ones in Ninja Gaiden are like gunning for you instantly. Also, what the hell are those little guys that are crawling around? I've always interpreted it as like a ravenous person crawl running at you like some kind of zombie. But it could be like a dog or something, like a weird dog. I don't know. I've seen weird dogs before. What are those things? Do you guys know? That's not related. Within the first level or so, things are just instantly completely unforgiving. And I think that is the distinction here I want to make. There are plenty of hard games that I really like, and there are unforgiving games that I like. But when a game is unforgiving, it is pretty much always a bad thing. For example, obviously in Ninja Gaiden, like most games of the time, there's no save states, there's a live system, and if you run out of lives, you get a game over and you have to start over. I think pretty much any game that has a game over screen that functions like that is kind of doomed from the beginning. Like, I'm probably never going to beat that game on original hardware. I don't want to start an entire game over. Like, there are so many games where like, on level 3 or something, there'll be this hard jump to make. Game over at that, and then you have to redo the whole thing. You're playing levels 1 and 2, so by the time I get to that death pit on level 3, I forget it's there and I jump in it and then I have to do them all over again. Like, there's nothing fun about that. I think I want to take this time now to jump from a game like Ninja Gaiden, where it is very unforgiving, it's very hard, there are a lot of precise movements you have to make to get through these levels, to a more modern game like Super Meat Boy, which is probably like 20 years old at this point now that I think about it, but that's scary. But to a more modern 20-year-old game, Super Meat Boy, where this is also a game that's super hard, it's also a platformer. And this game isn't nice to you about it. It's very, you know, you're literally like a dude made out of meat that like bleeds everywhere and like explodes. And then when you beat a level, it shows you like an overlapped replay of all your failed attempts. And it looks crazy. That's probably my favorite part about Super Meat Boy. It's so cool. My point is, this game knows it's hard. It's about being hard, but it works with you. Like, it's forgiving. It's hard, but it's forgiving. Because each level is relatively short, and every time you fail, instead of having to wait for like a game over screen and going back to start, pressing start, restarting all over, you just instantly respawn back at the beginning, and it is so quick. Another game that functions similarly to this is Hotline Miami, where it knows you're gonna die like 55 times trying to beat a level, so you spawn right back in and you can restart so quickly and so easily. I think both these games pull off being hard very well. Also, the framing of Super Meat Boy just makes more sense. Like I said, you're this meat thing in this unforgiving world full of needles and guys stealing your bandage girlfriend. Like, things are bad. But in the world of Ninja Gaiden, you're supposed to be like a cool, powerful guy. Like, games like Ninja Gaiden and Contra ultimately are power fantasies, but they don't, in gameplay, like tonally, that's not how the game feels because you keep dying. You're weak. So it makes more sense to be a character like Meat Boy in a game that's going to be hard, because Meat Boy's supposed to get beat up. He's supposed to kind of be the butt of the joke and to be, getting grinded up by gears and stuff. It doesn't make sense seeing Ryu get ground up by gears. I think that's Ryu Hayabusa, right? That's a Ninja Gaiden guy. When he gets, pushed off a ledge by an enemy, that's you failing as the player. That's not Ryu fulfilling his role as a character, and I don't think that that's good game design. And, you might say, well, they're ninjas. Like, obviously, their job's going to be hard, and it's going to be unforgiving for that reason. It's like, being a ninja in real life probably wasn't a super forgiving and accessible task. Which, sure, I guess I don't know what it was like being a ninja. But then there are other games, like Dynamite Headdy, let's say. I love this game. It is so cool. I am never going to beat it because of that stupid boss that's just a giant head that chases you around. And in general, like, I would never have gotten very far in this game at all if it wasn't for save states, which, yeah, I play pretty much all old games like this with save states. I wouldn't get really anywhere in them if I didn't. Dynamite Headdy, you're supposed to be like a fun dude in like a play in this super colorful and fun-looking world. Why is that hard? There's no reason this should be hard. You have all these heads that you can switch to that have all these crazy powerful abilities. You rarely get to use them, and then when they do, it's like they're on a floating platform and they keep switching, and it's hard to get the right one or even hit the platform at the right time. That's why a game like Kirby works for me, is because you get all these cool abilities and then the game encourages you to play with them. Whereas in Dynamite Headdy, it's just as punishing as most other platformers of the time. So, like, what is the point of all these different heads if you can't really play with them? Granted, like I said, the gameplay in this game is still fun. I have the original cart of it, and I'll put it in from time to time, but I'm never getting past, like, level 2 because I just run out of lives and die so quickly that it just doesn't make sense tonally. And then to end off this segment on platformers and their difficulty, I want to bring up one more really good modern example that I've talked about recently, so sorry about that. It's Celeste. And Andy and I have both expressed the utmost admiration for this game. It is so cool, and it's notoriously super hard. Why that works in a game like Celeste is, one, it's hard but it's forgiving. Like Super Meat Boy, you take it room by room, and if you die, you just respawn instantly and get to retry the room. And then secondly is that it works within the context of the game. Like, Celeste is about someone going through extreme mental turmoil, and, like, the whole climbing up the mountain thing is a metaphor for, like, fighting off yourself and understanding yourself and being kind and forgiving to yourself. So it makes sense that these challenges are all super hard on the mountain because it's a metaphor for inner turmoil and stuff like that. So it's really cool how the gameplay aligns in that way, and every time you overcome another platforming challenge in this game, you're then rewarded with story that reflects this growth and this achievement through the personal journey of this game. Games like Ninja Gaiden and Contra just tell you, hey, life sucks, deal with it. There's not going to be better games for like 10 years, so you're stuck with these. Not that they're bad games. Again, I need to keep reiterating that. I really like Ninja Gaiden, like, a lot, but I'm just never going to get past the 3rd level, and there's no way that doesn't make the game worse. Like, I would just rather see the whole game and be able to get through it, and I can't because it's so unforgiving. And then lastly, the other thing I alluded to was that this difficulty isn't a game design choice. Like, NES carts couldn't easily have save states. Obviously, some did, like Kirby's Adventure. Shout out, that game's sick. And especially, like, with the 16-bit generation, like, tons of SNES games have save states. Not as many Sega Genesis games for some reason. I guess it's just a hardware difference. But, it's not uncommon for platformers on the SNES to save your progress. The other reason that these games are so often like this is because it was just a predatory business practice. Like, I think it's Bayou Billy was infamously made harder when it came over to America to the point where it's, like, nigh unplayable, and now that game just sucks and has a horrible rating because it's pretty much unplayable because they just, they had a game, it was fully made, and then when they ported it here, they just jacked up the difficulty so that people couldn't rent it. What's the point of defending that? It's literally just a business taking advantage of you so that they can get more money from you. And you're like, yeah, the games are so hard, and that's good. Like, it's not It's not. It's just not. I'm sorry. And then there's other games, like I think shmups are a huge committer of this offense. I couldn't think of a better way to word that for some reason. Of just, trying to get as many quarters from you as possible. So they're super hard, and then you have to game over 25 times to actually get through the game. And you can get infinite continues as long as you pay for them. And they just want your money. Like, that doesn't make the game better. It makes the game better at getting money in an arcade in like the 80s, but it doesn't make the game more fun for anybody. So I don't get, like, again, if I could beat Gradius with one continue or whatever, I'd be obnoxious about it too. So I get it. But these games are worse off because of their difficulty. And especially in a game like Gradius, or just a lot of shoot-'em-ups of that type, it's like they're balanced around you getting power-ups. So then once you die, you lose all your power-ups, and then that's basically a game over, even though you have multiple lives, because you'll be at a harder point in the game, but you won't have any of the amenities you've earned yourself through playing it. So that's just kind of a momentum killer right there, and you ultimately end up having to restart anyways. So yeah, it's like either you're in the arcade and you're getting swindled for every quarter you have, or you're at home and the game isn't balanced right because it was made to steal quarters from you at an arcade. So when you die, you automatically game over, even though you have more lives. Like, none of that makes any sense to me. So yeah, with all that being said, I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to say here. I do like retro games, obviously, and I do like hard games. It's just, if they're hard and they're unforgiving and it doesn't play into what the game is actually about at all, then it takes away from the experience, and it just makes a lot of these games harder to return to for that reason. And I guess ultimately what I want to say is we shouldn't be shaming people for using save states or rewinds or anything like that, because it's not as if these games were perfect, well-oiled machines that were designed down to every minute detail. Like, no, they don't have save states because cartridges couldn't have save states, and they're hard because companies wanted to take money from you. So if people want to find ways to get around that, that makes sense and probably makes these games better and more playable. Let me know what you guys think about this. If you want to see some reviews I've done for games, new and old, both me and Andy are putting tons of reviews and new content up on the Patreon all the time. So check that out. We have deals starting at $1 a month. And like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. If you've stuck around to this point, let me know. Are there any old games that are too hard for you that kind of ruin the experience? Or what are some super hard games that you're proud of yourself for being able to beat? Thanks for watching.